What is up, and welcome back to Blood and Beer, the show where we talk blood sport and we drink beer. I'm your host, Matt, and as always, we've got some MMA to talk. We've got some beers to drink. We're drinking Bud Lights because it's the official drink of the UFC, and it was UFC 309 this past weekend. In today's show, we got a big one for you. We're going to be recapping the Mike Tyson versus Jake Paul card, and then we're also going to go over UFC 309, what went down this past weekend, and the most anticipated weekend in combat sports year to date so far, I would say. What a card. What a night for Jon Jones. And then after we recap all this, we're going to look ahead, play matchmaker, see what we want for the winners and some losers from UFC 309. And then we're going to look ahead at UFC Petr Yan versus Davison Figueiredo happening next weekend, this Saturday coming up. And we'll do a quick check out of the show. We'll have a pick 'em for you later this week. Don't forget, we got the giveaway still going on. You have until the end of this week to get entered. All you got to do to get entered is comment on one of my videos, and that gets you entered in the drawing to win a Blood and Beer t-shirt with this logo right here on it. All right, so with that being said, we're going to crack. Whoa, we got them cracked. We're going to sip some beers, and we'll start with the Paul versus Tyson card. And I mean, that card is what it is, was what it was, exactly how I pictured it going down. Jake Paul, a lot better shape. Mike Tyson's 58 years old. You know, he looks good on the mitts, but mitts can be kind of deceiving because if you have someone that's really good on the pads holding it for you, they can make you look a lot better. I'm not saying Tyson didn't look great, but with the age, with not being great at the end of his career also, he had a pretty rough end of his career. The endurance wasn't there. His knee was bad. He almost died in the hospital this summer. So Jake Paul carries him for 8 rounds. Boring fight is what it is, but it's good to see Mike get out of there unhurt and get his $20 million. Now, fight of the night, maybe fight of the year. Katie Taylor versus Amanda Serrano 2. This fight was fucking awesome. These women went to war going back and forth. Katie Taylor was landed headbutts left and right. I think 5 or 6 headbutts. She split Amanda Serrano bad over the eyelid. The doctor said she could continue, and then when she goes to the corner man's like, no, she can't continue. Asks the ref to stop it. The ref says, you got to make that call. I'm not going to do it. I don't care if it was a headbutt. You got to forfeit. I'm not doing it for you. So the fight continues. Amanda Serrano, at the beginning of the fight, she was cracking Taylor, really rocking her, outlanding her clearly, and she outlanded her the whole fight, but after the 4th round, after the big headbutt, it seemed like her punches just didn't have as much pop, and Serrano, she outlanded Taylor by over 100 strikes. I think it was over 107. All 3 judges, even with a point deduction for Katie Taylor, because in the 9th round, they finally took a point for the headbutts that she was given. But all 3 judges saw it 94-95 for Katie Taylor, so she's now up 2-0 on Amanda Serrano. Might have been a bit of a robbery, but it was a really close fight, and if you watched it live, even with Serrano's numbers, the 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th round... 10th round was pretty good for Serrano, but Taylor was just coming forward, throwing combos and landing, and they looked a lot harder in those later rounds. So she gets the win. Very controversial, just like the first one, but it is what it is. And then we had Mario Barrios. He took on, I think his name's Abelis Ramos, and this fight was fucking awesome too. Barrios comes out and drops Ramos early in round 1, and he's dominating. He's a much bigger guy, but he's dominating for the first 5 rounds, like kind of like the Serrano picture. But in round 6, Ramos, he starts to get his groove. He lands a nasty combination, and it puts Barrios down. Barrios recovers, comes fighting back, and it's a war from this point on. They're both cracking each other. It ends up going to the judges' scorecards. Barrios rallies big in the 12th. Majority draw, or split draw was the call, so judges 1 for Barrios, 1 for Ramos, 1 for a draw. Is what it is. You don't love to see that outcome, but a rematch between those two would be a great boxing match. And then the last thing we have for that card, we're not going to go over the first fight because it was dog shit, but the production issues that Netflix experienced in this, a lot of people are saying, well, what's that mean for UFC if they go there, or WWE who's going there at the start of next year? And I want to make it clear that it's actually not going to mean much to them because they're still putting on their same production. UFC's in charge of their own production. Netflix isn't going to take that over if UFC does sign with them. And also, You had 60 million households watching this. That's a lot of volume for those servers. So it's not surprising there was a lot of buffering and crashing. But I think that this was a pretty big hit for Netflix. 60 million, even with all the production issues. And the pacing on this card was terrible. I mean, I think they were doing it because of the production issues. They wanted to fix it. They couldn't get it fixed. But we had 45 minutes, an hour between these fights. It wasn't there. Brandon Barao, Barao, Morrow, God, can't remember his name. Morrow, though, he was a great announcer. Roy Jones Jr., during the card, he kept mentioning how Tyson's biting his glove, thinks there's something wrong with his mouthpiece, but Morrow just kept saying, Roy, I'm not trying to argue with you, but he does this in every single fight. There's nothing wrong with his mouthpiece. Probably had to say it 5 times to Roy Jones Jr., and Jones is just like not hearing it. But good card. Excited to see what comes next for Netflix. I love that it wasn't a pay-per-view. But we're going to be moving on to UFC 309, what I was most excited for. Not everybody else was. People really wanted to see Tyson get that knockout that he just couldn't get. It wasn't happening. But UFC 309, we get to see Jon Jones defend his title against Stipe Miocic. And Jones looked good, dominant. First round, he comes out striking. He's outlanding Stipe early. Gets a trip takedown and just beats the shit out of Stipe for the entire first round. 10-8s him, ground and pound for 3.5 minutes. It could have been stopped almost, but Stipe survives. Round 2 comes out. Stipe's landing some good shots. He's starting to put his combinations together, but he just looks about half an inch short to put any power on him. Jones is just out of the way. Jones is countering really well with headshots. His body kicks are landing. He's cracking Stipe's legs also. He's got so many weapons. In round 3, John's really taken over with the strike totals at this point, and he hits a spinning back kick to Stipe's ribs, breaks his ribs, I think, takes him down, gets some ground and pound, gets the victory. Then he goes on the mic and he says, I guess we'll give the fans what they want, but he doesn't say Tom Aspinall's name. Says he doesn't want to retire. He wants to negotiate with Hunter and Dana. But then in the post-fight press conference, he says he still doesn't want to fight Aspinall. He wants to fight Pereira. Legend fights. That's what he says. I don't know. He's still kind of ducking, but he's the interim champ. If you're going to fight again, you have to fight Tom Aspinall. It's been too long. And then Stipe Miocic, as everyone kind of pictured, he retires after this fight, and he's going to go down as the most decorated heavyweight champion in UFC history unless Jon Jones can continue to pull off this miraculous run for 2 or 3 more fights. But yeah, what a performance by Jon Jones. Went out there, showed he's the baddest man on the planet. He can beat you everywhere. He does beat you everywhere. And that brings us to our co-main event, Charles Oliveira versus Michael Chandler. And this fight was fucking awesome. Got fight of the night. I saw people on X and Facebook saying how Charles made it a boring fight with his wrestling. But I loved seeing that. I'm a huge Charles fan. And on the feet, he was explosive. He was cracking Chandler with uppercuts, hooks, straight shots, just walking him down. The T kick to the body. He landed nasty leg kicks, tearing Chandler's leg up. He landed an oblique kick that you could tell really hurt Chandler's knee. Chandler was slipping and falling the whole fight. And Charles had Chandler running from him several points in this fight where he had him hurt. Landed tons of big flying knees, just knees to the head in general. Had 15 minutes of control time mixed in with all that striking as well. 5 takedowns on 12 shots versus Michael Chandler. 2 submission attempts that were both really close. He was just working that rear naked choke every time he got his back. It was close, but round 5 starts after Oliveira's dominant the first 4, and Chandler comes out. He knows he's got to go balls to the wall, has nothing to lose, and he rocks Oliveira. Oliveira goes for a takedown. It gets reversed by Mike, and Mike just starts landing fucking, I think it was 40 shots to the back of the head where the ref didn't say a word, and I was worried that they were going to end up having to stop it because Oliveira was going to get hurt from that. But yeah, this fight was awesome, but it was really marred by the rule breaks by Chandler, and I don't think he's a dirty fighter. When I was watching it last night, I was like, man, Chandler's kind of a dirty fighter because he grabbed the cage several times. He grabbed the top of the cage to stay up when Charles slammed him, and then he hits the 40 shots to the back of the head. He fish hooked Dustin Poirier. He wiped his blood all over his face. He's kind of a dirty fighter, but I don't think he's doing it as a dirty person. He's just so intense. He will do anything it takes to win, I think. But regardless, with the 40 back of the head shots, Charles is able to rally, finish the fight on Chandler's back, and he gets the unanimous decision win. I mean, he's still there. He calls for the title next. Chandler gets on the mic and calls for Max Holloway next in a BMF fight. I don't know. He's 1-4 in his last 5. We'll have to see if they give it to him. I can't imagine they do, but that seems like it would be a good matchup for Max because Chandler's got the power, but Max could probably pick him apart for 5 rounds, 10 rounds if he needed to. And then that brings us to the what we thought might be a great fight, Bo Nickel versus Paul Craig. Not the way you thought it was going to go down. This fight was super boring. It was a point fighting kickboxing affair, I guess. Bo Nickel picks up a 30-27 unanimous decision, but he looked bad in there. He didn't shoot a single takedown. I get he wanted to prove a point, and Paul Craig is super dangerous off the ground. Maybe Bo was getting caught with triangles in training camp and didn't want to risk it against the guy that has the most triangles in UFC history, I think. But regardless, on the feet, he didn't look great. He's throwing one shot at a time, didn't set stuff up with his jab very well. Low kicks were few and far between. When he did throw them, he wasn't throwing them in succession. And he actually hurts Paul Craig in the 3rd round. Craig's grabbing his head because he got hurt by an overhand so bad. And what's Bo Nickel do when he smells blood on the feet? He stands in front of Paul Craig and doesn't throw a punch for 20 or 30 seconds. Lets Craig recover. And then last 10 seconds, Bo finally starts throwing. A little more reckless and combinations, but it's whatever. You got a 30-27 win. It was very disappointing for if you know about Bo, then you know he's a wrestling standout. Almost made the Olympics, 3-time NCAA champion in D1. Dude's a beast, but he went out there and he looked like a normal mid-card fighter. And then he gets on the mic. He says it was a picture-perfect performance. He says, Jon Jones came to the UFC with 6 fights. I'm just like him. It's like, no, you're not, buddy. No, you're not. Jon Jones was murdering people, and you've only murdered bums so far. So that's what we have for that one. Not a whole lot. Bo Nickel didn't look great, but yeah, whatever. Is what it is. We had Viviana Araujo. She took on Karine Silva, gets a unanimous decision victory in a pretty fun back-and-forth fight. They had some success on the feet. Both women shot for a submission at one point, but Silva kind of gassed, and Araujo was able to capitalize in that 3rd round and pull off the unanimous decision. And then we had the main card opener, Mauricio Ruffy. He took on James Yontop, minus 1,000 favorite for Ruffy. And he goes out there. Everybody's expecting an early stoppage. He looks great early, drops Yontop. He's piecing him up and with just shots the whole fight to his face. But Yontop is tough. His face is wrecked. He's been just put through the ringer, and he keeps moving forward. He landed a ton of body shots. And Ruffy gets the unanimous decision. It's kind of a letdown, but still undefeated for the Fighting Nerds. This dude looked good. He just needs to work on his gas tank, I think. But we'll see what's to come. Fighting Nerds go undefeated in 2024 so far. John Silva, Kyle Barrio, the girl that beat Molly McCann. You got Carlos Prates, and now you got Mauricio Ruffy, all undefeated in 2024. And then we had Marcus McGee. He picks up a unanimous decision win also over Jonathan Martinez, and this was a good fight. McGee goes out there early, and he's piecing him up with his boxing. He's finding a lot of success in the first 2 rounds. He clearly won those, I think. Round 3 comes along, and Martinez's leg kicks start doing some real damage. He almost got a leg kick TKO. McGee couldn't even stand on it, but McGee was able to survive and get the unanimous decision win in the featured prelim. And then that brings us to the guy that's been fighting for fucking ever, Jim A10 Miller. Jim fucking Miller. He jumps a guillotine in round 1 on Damon Jackson and gets it done. He's fought at UFC 100, 200, and 300. He says he's probably not going to do 400. He's stopping at 50 UFC fights. But man, this dude's still got it. He's been around forever, and he's finishing these dudes that should be beating him. He's always a dog on the betting line, and he gets it done more often than not anymore. He's got knockout power. His submission game is still there. BJJ's just nasty. You miss 100% of the gillies, you don't jump, and Jim Miller doesn't miss any gillies. All right, and that brings us to Marcin Tybura. He gets a doctor stoppage TKO over Jonata Diniz. He out-wrestles him the whole fight pretty much. The ground and pound Tybura was landing was nasty. And to close out the second round, he landed just an insane amount. Busts Deniz's face open, has him pretty much out. And Deniz's corner actually has to help him stand up to get back to his corner. You're not allowed doing that, so doctor steps in, says he's not good to continue, stops the fight. is what it is. People thought it was bullshit. I didn't necessarily think so. He was getting beat up, and you can't get help to your corner. That means you're not good. Not good at fighter just means you're not good. You're not there mentally. And then Ramiz Brahimaj gets a first-round knockout on Mickey Gall, lands a beautiful straight shot to the jaw, sits him down, and that's all she wrote. Gall's probably on his way out of the UFC at this point. Is what it is. Not a lot at stake on that fight. Oban Elliott, though, he gets a third-round knockout of Bazel Hafez. Straight punch, straight to the jaw again, sits him down. He outstruck him pretty much the whole fight with his volume, and then that power shot with 40 seconds into the third sits him down. Ref stops it. He lays flat on his back. He was rocked. And then finally, Eduarda Marta, she gets a unanimous decision win over Veronica Hardy. Out-wrestles her, outstrikes her, does what she needs to do. Her first UFC win, so good for her. So that's what we have for the card. It was a good card. Not a great card. A lot of weird fights, weird moments. The new gloves are gone. Old gloves are here to stay. We saw a lot more knockouts on the prelims, especially because of those old gloves, I think, because you weren't getting those one-shot sit-down knockouts like you were with the old gloves that you saw with the new gloves. It was actually down from 32% knockout rate to 21% under the new gloves. That's a 10% or 11% dropout when you look at just the total stats, but really it's like 33% less knockouts. So what do we want to see next? What do we want to see next for these fighters? Well, for Jon Jones, it's got to be Tom Aspinall. The Alex fight would be fun, but I think he'd dominate Alex. And like I said before, Aspinall is the interim champ. He's been the interim champ for over a year now. You got to give him his shot. That's the only thing you can do. And then Charles Oliveira, I want to see him take on Max Holloway for the BMF. Forget about the title. I don't want to see it fighting these wrestlers that want to hold you down and not do any damage. Not saying that's what Islam does. Islam's a beast. But I want to see Charles in fun fights. And I think he's a bad matchup for Max Holloway. He's got weapons everywhere, and on the ground he's definitely got the advantage. On the feet, Holloway's a better boxer, but Oliveira's a really good boxer. He'll sit there and take your shots. Holloway doesn't have that sit-down knockout power with one shot, and it'd just be a really good matchup. The unpredictability of Charles, the front kicks, the high jump kicks, the leg kicks, the punching, the elbows, the Muay Thai clinch, and then the ground game as well. His wrestling's improved so much. That would be an awesome fight, and if anybody deserves a BMF, I think it's him. And then for Michael Chandler, I don't want to see him in a BMF title fight. He's lost 4 of his last 5. He's 2-4 in the UFC. Not looking great, but they're always fun fights. Badass moments only. So what do I want to see for him? I want to see him take on Paddy Pimblett, or if it's not Paddy Pimblett, give him Conor McGregor if Conor ever comes back. I don't know if he will, but that's what I want to see. And then Bo Nickel, he still needs lighter competition, I think. Paul Craig was a tough test for him. I'd like to see him against a guy like RDR, Reiner de Ritter, who just came over from one championship. I know he's a double champ over there, but he didn't look good in his debut. His striking is really sloppy. I think Bo would have the advantage striking. The ground game would be really interesting. The Dutch jiu-jitsu style that Reiner de Ritter has, where he does just a bunch of trips and overpowers you, wet blankets but still moves from position to position, looking for a submission. That would be a fun fight. Bo, like I said, advantage on the feet. Ground, though, it's up in the air. Bo's definitely a better wrestler, but Reiner de Ritter has submissions for days. Mauricio Ruffy, I want to see him get a true test against a guy like Drew Dober, who's going to take you to deep water and make you really work to get that win or get that finish. And then Marcus McGee, give him Rob Font, boxing match, 135. Rob Font's been acclaimed as the best boxer at that division so far as skills go. That'd be a super fun fight. Font's jab's nasty. It might be a problem for McGee, but McGee is just relentless. The dude's tough. And then Jim Miller. I want to see him fight anybody coming in off the Dana White Contender Series near his weight. He relishes these fights. I know that's not what Damon Jackson was, but he went on a 3-fight knockout streak where he knocked out 3 people making their UFC debut. I think they were all coming off the Contender Series as well. So yeah, that's the fights I want to see next if I was a matchmaker. Now, fight changes, new fight announcements, what have you. On December 14th, It was initially supposed to be Ian Gary versus Joaquin Buckley in the main event at UFC Miami. That's been changed to Colby Covington versus Joaquin Buckley. And the reason for that is Ian Gary gets moved up 1 week. He's going to be taking on Shavkat Rakhmonov, short notice, December 7th, UFC 310 in a number one contender fight. Someone's O's got to go. Two undefeated guys. It's going to be a great fight. And because we had Bilal drop out, they didn't get another title fight in there. We're going to see Alejandro Pantoja. He's going to be taking on Kai Asakura in the main event of that fight. And another fight that just got added to that, Kron Gracie's making his comeback, and he's taking on Bryce Mitchell. It's going to be a good fight. Both guys are really good on the ground. Bryce Mitchell's freakishly strong on the ground, and his jiu-jitsu is just lights out. Kron Gracie, what do you got to say? He's a Gracie. You don't want to go to the ground with a Gracie. So that's going to be a fun fight. And then, like I said, we're going to be looking ahead at this UFC fight night. It's really a fight morning. Jan versus Figueiredo. Two guys looking to get back to the title shot. Jan, he's been there. He's been a champ before. Figueiredo has two at a different division. You know, you got this super great boxer, master of boxing in Petr Yan. And then Figueiredo's really transformed his game. He was a berserker at 125, just knocking people out, jumping on rear naked chokes and cranking the necks off people. At 135, he's a much more measured, disciplined, all-round MMA fighter. His wrestling is phenomenal. His striking is great. It's going to be a good fight. I don't know how it's going to go yet. I'll have to watch some film and see if I can get a take, because it's going to be a good fight. Could be a weird fight. But what a main event. And then we have Song Kenan taking on the king of Kung Fu and Muslim Salikov. Salikov's probably going to win that. Kenan's not that good, but Salikov's not that great either. It's going to be a striking fight for sure. Both these dudes want to keep it on the feet, so can't wait for that one. We got Kong Wong, however her name's said. One of the only people to defeat Valentina Shevchenko in kickboxing. She's coming off a 60-second knockout in her UFC debut, and she's going to look to keep the ball rolling against Gabriela Fernandez. This girl's got real one-punch knockout power at 125, so she's deadly, undefeated. That's going to be fun. We got Volkan Ozdemir taking on Carlos Ulberg, another stand-up fight that's going to be fun. Ulberg's got this weird, lanky kind of rope-a-dope style where he's in, out, throwing shots from weird angles, and he's good at it. He's got great head movement. Gas Tank has fallen apart in the past, but Ozdemir, you don't know what you're going to get. The guy can pack a serious punch if he's landing these straight shots. Problem is, he can get beat pretty easily. He loses a lot of fights. And they've been trying to book Ulberg against a guy in the top 15, top 10 for a while, and they just haven't been able to. Everything keeps falling out, so good for him. And yeah, that's what we got for you. We got a pick'em card coming at you this week as well for this card. The card's at 3 a.m. is when the prelims start Eastern time. 6 a.m. Is for the main card. So weird start time. I'm going to be up early as hell watching this. I can't wait for that. But thank you for tuning in. Make sure you comment. Let me know your thoughts on this card. What you think of the new gloves. What you think about Jon Jones. What he should do next. What you want to see next. And what was your favorite fight from this weekend? I got to say it was Taylor versus Serrano. What a fucking war that was. But I was most amped for that Charles Oliveira fight because he just does something to you when you're watching him. The dude's a warrior. He takes damage and he gives 10 times back. It's great. Thank you for tuning in, though. I'll see you on the Pick'em episode. This has been the recap for this just monumental fight weekend that we had in combat sports. So thank you for tuning in. That's all I got for you. Make sure you get entered in the contest. Subscribe to my channel so you get all the videos and all the picks. Let's make some money. We were up 347.50 last week on our picks, bringing us to positive for the year. So we're now up 287.50 year to date. So we're doing something right. Finally, we're done treading water, being even for weeks on end. We can finally start to dig ourselves out of this hole and build some serious profit to close out the year. But yeah, I'm Matt with Blood and Beer for the 30 fucking time. Thank you for tuning in.